The morning sun had barely risen when the city bus depot came alive. Engines roared to life one by one, releasing thick clouds of smoke into the cool air. Drivers shouted greetings to each other, conductors checked tickets, and mechanics rushed around with oil-stained hands. It was the same routine every day, loud, chaotic, and unforgiving. Among the drivers stood a man most people barely noticed. His uniform was clean but old, the fabric slightly faded from years of washing. His name badge read Ethan Cole, Seletic. He moved calmly, methodically, checking his bus with quiet, focused tires, mirrors, engine sound. He didn't rush, didn't complain, didn't joke loudly like the others. To most people, Ethan was just another bus driver. Replaceable. Invisible. Passengers often judged him the moment they stepped onto the bus. Some looked at his worn shoes with disgust. Others avoided eye contact entirely. A few spoke to him sharply, as if kindness cost extra. "Driver, hurry up. Why is this bus always late? Do you people even know how to do your job?" Ethan never responded with anger. He simply nodded and continued driving. What no one knew, what no one even imagined, was that Ethan Cole was not just a bus driver. He was the founder and sole owner of Metroline Transit, the largest private transportation company in the city. Years ago, Ethan had built the company from nothing. One bus, one route, one dream. 2 decades of hard work, smart decisions, and relentless discipline. He turned it into a massive operation with hundreds of buses and thousands of employees. But power had never interested him. Control never thrilled him. People did. Recently, complaints have been pouring in about rude staff, discrimination, careless behavior. Managers blamed drivers. Drivers blamed passengers. No one took responsibility. So Ethan made a decision no one expected. He put on the uniform again. He became a bus driver. Not undercover for drama. Not for publicity. But to see the truth. That morning, his route passed through the busiest part of the city corporate offices, shopping districts, and wealthy neighborhoods. The kind of places where people judged quickly and apologized never. To the third stop, a group of office workers boarded. One man in an expensive suit scoffed loudly. "Unbelievable. This driver looks like he hasn't bought new shoes in 10 years. Laughter followed. Ethan heard every word. He said nothing. A woman near the front wrinkled her nose. "Why do these buses always smell like oil and sweat?" Another passenger muttered, "Because people like him drive them." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel for just a second. Then relaxed. He had heard worse. At the next stop, an elderly woman struggled to climb the steps. Thing immediately stood up, held her arm, and helped her sit. "Thank you, son," she said softly. That single sentence carried more respect than all the suits combined. Midway through the route, a young conductor named Ryan boarded to check tickets. He was new, arrogant, and eager to show authority. "Driver," Ryan snapped, "you missed the last time in checkpoint. Do you even read the schedule?" Ethan looked at him calmly. Traffic delay. Accident on 5th Street. Ryan smirked. "Excuses. I'll report this." Passengers watched with interest. Some enjoyed seeing the driver get to the depot. Later that day, Ethan parked his bus and walked toward the staff room. Before he could enter, a supervisor blocked his path. "Drivers use the back entrance," the man said coldly. Ethan glanced at the sign. "I was just getting water." "Rules are rules," the supervisor replied. "Don't act like you own the place." A few nearby employees chuckled. Ethan smiled faintly. If only they knew. That afternoon, an internal meeting was announced. Senior management, supervisors, and inspectors were called to the main hall. Drivers were told to stay outside. Ethan stood among them, arms crossed, listening as managers walked past without a glance. Inside, voices echoed angrily. Complaints were being discussed. Someone said, "Drivers are the problem." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Then, quietly, he stepped forward and walked inside. A manager shouted, "Hey! Drivers are not allowed." Ethan removed his cap. The room fell silent. Every executive froze as they recognized his face. The CEO, the founder, the man whose signature decided their careers. "Good afternoon," Ethan said calmly. "Please continue." I was enjoying the honesty. Faces turned pale. Some stood up instantly. Others couldn't move at all. Ethan looked around the room slowly. "For weeks," he continued, "I drove your buses. I listened to your staff. I watched how passengers were treated and how drivers were humiliated." He paused. "You blamed the lowest people in the system. While protecting yourselves, no one spoke." Outside, drivers whispered nervously. Inside, power shifted. And this was only the beginning. The silence inside the meeting hall felt heavier than any shout ever could. Every executive, every senior manager, every supervisor sat frozen. eyes locked on Ethan Cole as if they were seeing a ghost. The same man they had passed in hallways, without a glance. The same man who had been ordered to use the back entrance now stood at the head of the table, with calm authority written across his face. Ethan placed his driver's cap gently on the table. 4 weeks, he continued, his voice steady but firm. I drove your buses. I followed schedules. I dealt with traffic, rude passengers, broken systems, and careless supervision. I listened. I watched. One senior manager cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Cole, this is highly irregular. You could have called us. You would have fixed. No, Ethan interrupted quietly. You would have hidden. That single word cut deeper than any accusation. You would have prepared reports, rehearsed answers, blamed drivers, and protected titles. Ethan went on. I didn't want presentations. I wanted truth. He turned slightly, his eyes locking on the supervisor who had blocked him earlier that day. Do you remember telling a driver to use the back entrance? Ethan asked. The supervisor swallowed hard. Sir, I was just enforcing. You were enforcing humiliation, Ethan said. And you enjoyed it. The room remained silent. Phew. Ethan shifted his attention to another manager. And you, he said calmly, signed off on complaints without investigation. You marked them driver fault automatically. Do you know what that does to morale? The manager lowered his head. Outside the hall, drivers and conductors whispered anxiously. Word had spread quickly. Why is Ethan inside? Who is he really? Why did the managers stand up when he entered? Ryan, the young conductor who had mocked Ethan earlier, stood near the doorway. His face was pale. Something in his gut told him the truth was far worse than he imagined. Inside, Ethan finally sat down. 4 years, he said, I believed systems would regulate themselves if built correctly. I was wrong. Systems rot when empathy is removed. He stood again. Today, that changes. He pressed a button on the remote. The screen behind him lit up with footage. Security camera clips. One showed a driver being yelled at by a passenger while a supervisor watched and laughed. Another showed a conductor abusing authority. Another showed managers ignoring safety complaints. Then the screen changed. Footage from inside a bus. Ethan himself, in uniform, being mocked by passengers. Insulted, ignored. A few executives looked away in shame. I didn't intervene, Ethan said. Because this is what happens every day when no one important is watching. He turned toward the door. Bring them in. The doors opened. Drivers, conductors, mechanics, they entered hesitantly, eyes wide, unsure why they had been summoned. Ethan faced them. My name is Ethan Cole, he said, and I owe you an apology. Gasps rippled through the room. I built this company, he continued, but I failed to protect its soul. Allow power to flow upward and respect to disappear downward. Ryan felt his knees weaken. The driver he had insulted was the owner? Ethan looked directly at him. Young man, he said calmly, do you remember telling a driver you'd report him for excuses? Ryan nodded slowly, throat dry. That driver, Ethan said, was me. Ryan's face flushed red. Sir, I didn't know. That's the point, Ethan replied. You didn't need to know. Respect should not depend on titles. He turned back to the room. Effective immediately, Ethan announced. There will be changes. He listed them slowly, deliberately. All supervisors will rotate 1 week every quarter in frontline roles. A murmur spread. Anomalous complaints will be investigated by an independent unit. Executives exchanged glances. Any employee found humiliating another will face termination regardless of rank. The room stiffened. And finally, Ethan said, I will personally drive routes once a month. Permanently. Shock gave way to something else. Hope. One driver stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, does that mean we'll finally be heard? Ethan nodded. It means you already are. 2. The meeting ended differently than any before it. No applause, no speeches. Just quiet understanding. As employees filed out, conversations were hushed, reflective. Some executives avoided eye contact. Others approached drivers with awkward apologies. Ryan stood frozen until Ethan approached him. I'm sorry, Ryan said, voice breaking. I thought authority meant control. Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. Authority means responsibility. Learn that, and you'll be fine. Days passed. Changes began immediately. Supervisors worked routes. Managers cleaned buses. Policies shifted from paper to practice. Passengers noticed too. Drivers smiled more. Buses felt calmer. Complaints dropped. One morning, Ethan drove the same route again. A suited man boarded, ready with an insult, but stopped. Something felt different. Ethan met his eyes, calm and steady. Good morning, Ethan said. The man hesitated, then nodded. Good morning. Small changes. Big meaning. The depot later, the elderly woman from before approached Ethan. I heard who you are, she said softly. Ethan smiled. Then please forget it. She smiled back. It won't, but I'll remember how you treated me. 3. That evening, Ethan walked through the depot, not as a ghost, not as a secret, but as a reminder. That dignity does not come from power. Power comes from dignity. And a company, like a city, only moves forward when everyone is treated as human first.